So today we're going to be doing something I am very excited about. About a month before I started this whole YouTube thing, a couple of friends and I got into a discussion over our Pixar rankings, and I got into some heat for some of my takes. So yeah, I think I'll just let y'all decide how hot my takes were. Also, you may be judging me for tackling two children's media franchises in back-to-back videos, but first of all, don't judge, it's not kind. And second of all, I'm in your computers and your phones. I see what you have open on Spotify. Olivia Rodrigo, really? Toy Story, the one that started it all. I believe the first ever 3D animated film. Just a phenomenal way to kick off an animation company, my goodness. That being said, this movie hasn't aged particularly well as far as animation goes, because it was the first one, you can only go up from there. Well, that's not necessarily true. But also, I feel like the characters aren't quite as fleshed out as they are in later films. Also, like, Woody's just really unlikable in this movie at times. Which, funny enough, I know he was supposed to be even more unlikable in the original script. I'm pretty sure, like, at the beginning, whenever he knocks Buzz out the window, in the original script, he was supposed to intentionally push him out, which would have been hilarious, but I'm glad that they toned back on that a little. Also, this movie is just really creepy compared to the other ones. I like to err on the side that Sid was just being a creative kid, even if he is a little bit punkish to his sister. But some of the stuff that he made probably signs that he should go to therapy. Overall, this movie, a great start for the studio, but it's gonna land in the B tier. I should also mention that this list is relative to Pixar, so there will be at least one movie in every single tier. Pixar's follow-up to Toy Story was A Bug's Life. I know a lot of people really like this movie, but the plot's really not all that interesting to me. I didn't really vibe with any of the characters, especially not any of the circus bugs. But also, I first watched this movie whenever I was a little kid, and I was scared shitless by this movie. Alright, and it's not just Hopper, who is just a terrifying villain. Every single one of the characters just scared me. I think it was just the design of them and the animation for the time. But it's just ever since then has always left a bad taste in my mouth. So I'm going to be putting it in C tier. Toy Story 2 just might be the best sequel ever made. It's an improvement in every way over the original, in animation, story, character. It's just phenomenal. The story, for one, is just much more interesting. And just the way that you see Woody's mind work, just considering, is the museum the best fit for him? There are times during the movie where you as a viewer are wondering that. Him as an older toy starting to show where is a child's bedroom really where he's supposed to be. And then of course there's the Prospector, for the first of many Pixar twist villains. But when you think about it, is he really even a villain? He's already decided what Woody's considering for himself. Preservation is the best place for him. And when Woody decides it's not what he wants, the Prospector tries to force him to come with him because he knows that's the only way for him to get to the museum. It's phenomenal storytelling and even better character writing. Monsters, Inc. features one of the best duo in all of cinema. In the first movie, we don't get an origin story of how they met. They already are best friends and partners. Boo is absolutely adorable, and just seeing Sully slowly grow to care for her it's just something else. Also, this is another instance of a well-written twist villain. Waternoose is very clearly twisted by greed and blinded by the greater good mentality. Also, that scene where they're riding on the doors and it's like a roller coaster in there. Why is there not a ride at Disney World based on that? Another A tier for Pixar. Finding Nemo, I don't know, I don't really have a lot to say about Finding Nemo. It's a very sweet story of Marlin on a journey to find his son, with memorable vignettes and characters that he meets that teach him lessons that eventually, whenever he does find Nemo, teach him to be a better dad. Also, it has the added bonus of the opening Barracuda scene scaring my little brother to the point where he would cry, so obviously I wanted to watch a lot as a kid. Another A tier. The Incredibles is proof that superheroes are cool no matter how oversaturated Hollywood is with them nowadays. Brad Bird is a wonder with this film, with how fun and action-packed it is, with amazing character dynamics and family motifs, and it's so good. Syndrome is an incredible villain. I love this movie. It's also the first Pixar movie with the soundtrack written by Michael Giacchino, who is by far the best Pixar composer. Obviously, pretty much every Pixar movie has incredible music, but Giacchino just takes it to a whole new level. The Incredibles is actually going to be our first S tier. Man, Pixar is really on a roll. The last 4 movies have all been A tier or higher. I wonder what's next. Oh god. Yeah, in case you couldn't already tell from the thumbnail, I do not like cars. There is a rabbit hole to be found when thinking about the world of Cars. And it is not a good one. How do they build their infrastructure? How do they reproduce? Why do they need to sleep? And don't give me that whole cars are actually bugs, because that just makes even less sense. And also the movie is called Cars. They're cars. The only innovative thing that Cars has done for cinema is moving the eyes from the headlights to the windshield. That's it. Not to mention that the dumbest part of this movie, by far, is its ending. No one has been able to explain to me, aside from thematical reasoning, why lightning stops at the finish line. There's no reason for it. Oh, but he needs to turn around and go help the king finish the race. Yeah, finish the damn race first and then turn around and go get him. I'm sorry, I'm getting heated. I'm getting heated over a kid's movie again. Now, I know you're gonna leave your dislikes. Please do, it's just viewer engagement at this point. But understand that I do think Cars is a fine enough kids movie. I liked it growing up. It's enjoyable for a kid, and it's better than like 99% of what Illumination puts out. But that being said, Cars is going to be our first F-tier Pixar movie. I really needed to get that out of me. Ratatouille is not the most emotional Pixar film. It's also not the greatest spectacle. The visuals are amazing, and the music, again with Michael Giacchino at the helm, is phenomenal. But what makes Ratatouille so good? Ratatouille, for a long time, has been my favorite Pixar movie. But recently I've started to worry that that was just for the nostalgia of it. But when for this video I went back and watched Ratatouille, I realized that that was not the case. Ratatouille is so good because of the way that each story beat moves seamlessly to the next. The way that each theme plays so well off of one another. It's in the way that these two characters who have no way of direct communication connect so well together. Ratatouille, it goes to the top. WALL-E. My wife hates this movie for some reason, and I, for the love of God, cannot tell you why. I mean, it's an adorable love story between two robots. What else could you want? It's S tier. Up has one of the most beautiful, sobering opening sequences in any film. The array of emotions that you go through watching Carl and Ellie's relationship, from whenever they first meet to whenever they fall in love, get married, the anguish of them not being able to have children until her eventual death is just, it's something else. And then after that, it falls off a cliff. There are a lot of bright spots in this movie, even after the opening sequences. It has a lot of really important things to say about dealing with grief and letting go. But in the end, Up really is just a 20-minute short film extended out to feature length. That being said, it is still good enough to make it into B tier. Toy Story 3. We didn't need you, but I sure am glad that you exist. This movie came out when I was 11, I think, so the whole Andy going off to college didn't really relate to me. That being said, I did first watch this movie with my older brother and some of his older friends, those of which were graduating and going off to college, and they really related to this movie. I do love how every Toy Story movie has a different character journey for Woody. The third one is him learning how to move on from Andy, just how Andy's moved on from the other toys, and by the end of the film, also him. And just the parallels between the journey that him and Andy go through. Well, really subtle is just really well done. This movie is also just a lot of fun. I mean, it's a prison break from a daycare, for goodness sake. Lotso is an incredible villain. Yeah, he's technically a twist villain, but it happens so early on that I wouldn't really count it as that. Also, the way that his character kind of foils Woody's in the sense that they've both kind of been abandoned in a way, and they both react very differently. It's just really neat. And then, of course, the two scenes at the very end. The first one where they're all holding hands going into the incinerator. And then also Andy dropping off his old toys at Bonnie's and playing with her is just hits in all the feels. I'm gonna put it right below 2, but I do think that these two movies are very, very good. Another pretty decent run from Pixar. In their last 4 movies, they've had 2 S tiers, an A tier, and their lowest has been a B tier. My goodness, what's next? Oh no. Cars 2. I don't understand how this got greenlit. This movie, it's bad. It's really bad. But Cars is also bad. And to be honest, this movie might be more fun, honestly, to watch. can't put it above Cars. No. 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 Oh shit, Michael Giacchino did the music for this movie. Brave was boring. Moving on. Monsters University tried to kind of pull what Toy Story 3 did. There's pretty much the exact same amount of time between it and Monsters Inc. as there was between Toy Story 3 and Toy Story 1. I don't know, it just didn't hit quite the same. They try to go for very different themes. It is pretty cool seeing how Monsters higher education works, especially with how scaring itself is its own degree, considering how useful of a skill it is in this world. And honestly, I think it's a perfectly fine movie up until the scare games start. None of the scare game challenges I really found to be very fun or entertaining. Also, what about Mike is not scary? If I saw a tiny little round goblin running around my room, scratching on my walls, I would be terrified. I guess he's not as scary as some of the other monsters, but I mean, Sawyer's just a big teddy bear. So this movie, it doesn't do it for me. I'm putting it in C tier. Inside Out's reception kind of confuses me. It's a highly rated film, but for some reason I see it get a lot of hate. I don't know what those people are thinking. This movie is amazing. It's just the way that the movie knows that you have this presupposition that Joy is good, and she obviously must be right because she's trying to keep Riley happy all the time. But as you slowly realize that she actually is just this controlling individual who herself needs to grow and needs to learn that all the other emotions are just as important as she is. You can't beat that. And there are several scenes in this movie that will make me cry every single time that I watch it. This movie, it's not quite as good as the Toy Stories, but it's up there. The Good Dinosaur is one of 4 movies that I hadn't seen yet going into making this video. The other 3 being Cars 3, Onward, and Turning Red. Going into this movie, I thought it was probably going to be the worst one because that's just what I've heard about it. I heard it was derivative. I heard it had piss poor pacing. I knew it had bad character design. And yes, it does have all these different things. It's just The Land Before Time meets The Lion King meets How to Train Your Dragon. And the pacing in this movie is like a racehorse on 3 legs. It just doesn't know what it's doing. But this movie is gorgeous. It also has really good music. And it's also strangely emotionally touching. There's this one scene where they don't speak at all, but they're both communicating how they've both lost their family. It's one of the better Pixar scenes in general. Those things on their own don't fix a lot of what's wrong with this movie, but I did enjoy it a lot better than I thought I would. Finding Dory is interesting because whenever I first watched it, I really liked it. But on subsequent viewings, not so much. The new characters aren't really all that memorable, and the story itself, I couldn't even tell you what Nemo and Marlin are really doing the whole time. The ending does hit very hard whenever Dory finds that trail of shells, and eventually finds her parents. But why does a fish have a receding hairline? Dude looks like LeBron out here. Finding Dory, it's going in C tier. Not a great run for Pixar. Out of the last 5, only 1 broke out of C tier. Let's see if they can bounce back with the next one. Oh god damn it. They made 3 of these? It's not needed. It's not needed, okay? I don't even want to talk about this movie. I did not want to watch this movie. I just want to be done with this franchise. That being said, for like 90% of the movie, it's much more engaging, much more fun. It's still bad, but I found myself actually kind of enjoying watching it. And then the end happened. And this is the worst Pixar movie because of the end. You spend the whole movie talking about these new supercars and how it's like a generational thing, to where it's just phasing out all the old racers. And then you bring in Cruz, who's never actually raced before, and she somehow wins? Disney described Coco as their love letter to Mexico, and it absolutely is. The appreciation for the culture that they are showcasing is very apparent throughout the film. The animation is just off the chart, especially with the guitar. Something that for some reason always bothers me in animation is whenever people are playing instruments, and not even that they're not playing the right notes, that it's nowhere near matches. Pixar did the meticulous work of actually matching up the notes with the music, and it pays off so well, especially in those close-up shots. Just its focus on finding your heritage and the importance of remembering your ancestors. It's just really sweet. That being said, I'm not a fan of the villain. I don't know, it was just way too obvious Ernesto being the villain. And in the climax of the movie, you just catch him on camera monologuing about everything that he's done. Still a very good movie. I think it sits comfortably at the bottom of A tier. I think it just could have been better if the villain was done more subtly. Incredibles 2. F*** you. This movie is so bad. It's not even... It's a well-made movie. It's just... I don't know. Maybe it's just because of how good the first movie is, I'm judging this movie unfairly. But come on. I understand them shifting to focus more on Elastigirl as the hero. It makes sense for her to be the first hero back. It especially makes sense for Bob not to be the first hero back. But honestly, Bob is just an ass the whole time to her. He's never happy for her. He's always focused on how he just wants to get back into heroing and he doesn't care about the public perception of it. And he never learns that lesson. He's just a dick about it the whole time, and then at the end he gets the hero again. And that's his progression. Not to mention that they also nerfed him incredibly from the first movie. There was the scene where the telekinetic guy makes all the pipes burst and block his path. In the first movie, Bob would have just busted right through that, and instead it completely derailed him. This is the guy who had bench pressing 2 trains in the first movie. He should not be struggling with this. It's so weird. The villain is just so obvious and just so boring and it's just moronic, honestly. None of the new heroes are interesting. None of them have good designs. None of them really play an important role in the movie. It's such a mess. Toy Story 4 is just downright beautiful. Pixar was just showing off with this movie. I will say every Toy Story starts pretty much the exact same, with Woody getting displaced from his home and having to make his way back. But it's not a bad thing to have a similar start, especially since all the Toy Story movies take a different path to getting there. It's not nearly as emotionally gripping as 3 was, and a story wasn't as tight as 2 was, but it's still a really good film overall, and I really don't understand people who say that it takes away from 3. Toy Story has always been a franchise about growing and change and moving forward, so it makes sense that Bonnie wasn't the end for Woody. That being said, please don't make another movie. Who said this was a bad movie? Onward, it's fun, it's emotionally gripping, the ending is phenomenal. I've never been a fan of urban fantasies, so I wasn't super excited for this movie, but they hit this one kind of out of the park for what it is. Yeah, it gets repetitive with them always meeting these characters who don't use the magic that they possess and kind of showing them how to use it again. Chris Pratt's character is annoying, but I really don't find him that annoying, and by the end he's kind of endearing. I don't know, I really like this movie. I mean, obviously it's not the best Pixar movie, but it's a good ways higher than a lot of people have it. Soul hits on every emotional level. The theme of life not being defined by what you do, but how you live it's very personal to me right now. And just the kind of the twist that this movie takes, especially when he finally gets 22's badge and he's able to go back and he plays with the band, and it's kind of just what's next? And just that realization whenever he figures out what made 22's badge finally work, it's just that it was just the simple things in life, the simple joys. This movie's phenomenal. The only thing that's keeping this movie out of S tier, I understand it's a children's film. I know why they did this, but the scene of them giving Joe another chance is just very forced and very rushed. And to me, it kind of broke the movie thematically. Kind of the whole point was Joe coming to terms that even though he never really accomplished what he wanted, he still lived a good life. And him finally going on to the great beyond would have been the perfect ending to this film. Again, that's probably a little heavy for a children's film, but this movie as a whole is heavy, so. The whole time I was watching Luca, I was waiting for that, Pixar emotional hit punch in the gut. And it just never really comes, which a lot of people took to be a bad thing. It's just a fun movie about kids growing up and learning how to deal with the new relationships that they're in. I take Luca to kind of be baseline good Pixar. If you're better than Luca, you're good for a Pixar movie. If you're worse, you're on the lower end. So that's why Luca goes right at the back of B tier. I wasn't super excited to see Turning Red. It didn't really look interesting to me visually or from a storytelling perspective, and that's kind of the way I feel about it still. I really don't like the music or the art direction in this movie, and this is probably bad to say because it's probably good that they're branching out of it. It's not very Pixar. That being said, it had a good enough story. It was a pretty fun movie. I did enjoy watching it, but I was still kind of ready for it to be done when it was. Yeah, this movie, it just edges out The Good Dinosaur, but not much above that. That's actually all the movies for now. I'm actually recording this a few days before Lightyear comes out, so I can get a head start on editing. I'm really excited for it. I hope it's going to be good. I'll let you know my thoughts on it after I see it. Okay, Lightyear came out. I went and saw it. Gave myself some time to think about it, and yeah, it was okay. Yeah, I really liked the decision just to rip the Band-Aid off at the beginning and confirm that this is the movie that Andy saw as a kid. It keeps all those pesky theories away. That being said, Lightyear doesn't really feel like a movie coming out in 1995. Obviously, the animation quality is a lot higher than what they had back then. But I would imagine in the Toy Story universe, Lightyear would be a live-action film, so that's not really an issue. That being said, the story and characters themselves were very modern. So I probably would have preferred if they tried to make a movie as if it was 1995. And no, that's not in reference to the lesbian couple. As to the actual quality of the movie, the animation's stellar, and the music's really good, although it is a little bland for Michael Giacchino. And the story, for the most part, was pretty good. I like the characters, I like the action. I'd say it's fair to call this movie the coolest thing Pixar's produced since The Incredibles. Through the first act of the movie, I thought it was going to be an easy A tier. But then it started leading up to this one plot point, and I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't. But I started to suspect this one twist, and I was really hoping it wasn't going to happen. And then it did, and that kind of ruined the movie a bit. The story's fine overall, and it finishes strong, but there are a lot of lulls and parts that weren't as enjoyable as others, so I'm gonna keep it out of A tier, but it does land in B tier. And that's all the movies. I don't really expect my opinion to stay the same for very long, especially on some of the newer movies that I had seen, but for now this is a pretty good representation of what I think of the studio's work. And that's really all I have for this video. If you liked it, please leave a like. If you didn't, tell me what you would change in the comments below. Please subscribe, check me out on Twitter, @SteelBoyColor. So yeah guys, that's really all I have for this video. I really hope y'all enjoyed, and cars.